Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us and welcome to the 105th session of Majlis Al Khonji. Please allow me to introduce our guest for this session, Her Excellency Dr. Nora Ourabah Haddad, representative of the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations in the Sultanate of Oman. As Oman enjoys a dynamic partnership with FAO, which was strengthened in 2012 with the opening of the FAO country representation. Cooperation has focused on sustainable development of the food, agriculture, and fisheries sectors, while ensuring the efficient of sustainable use of natural resources. FAO's support also focuses on the achievement of value added in the priority areas identified by Oman. I would like also to welcome Dr. Mohammed Al-Rizaqi, the Deputy Director of Innovation and Technology Transfer Center at Sultan Qaboos University and a researcher at the College of Agricultural and Marine Science, in moderating this session today. Welcome, Dr. Mohammed, and over to you and our guest, Dr. Nora. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Rihab. Good evening to all. Tonight, we will have our honor to welcome Her Excellence, Dr. Nora Ourabah Haddad, to Majlis Al Khonji, and it's my pleasure to welcome her in the 105th session of Majlis Al Khonji. Dr. Nora, she's a FAO representative to the Sultanate of Oman, and Her Excellence, of course, will talk on the food system toward 2030 in terms of nutrition, as well as in terms of health. Also, she will be talking about the partnership across the food systems. The space is yours now, Your Excellence, and after that, we will have an open discussion. We'll give the floor to our guests to enrich the discussion. So, Dr. Nora, please take the floor. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Mohammed. First of all, I would like to thank Majlis Al Khonji for inviting me to this evening, to this important event. And I would like to also mention that when I can, I follow very much what you do, and I think that your mandate is really commendable as you bring about very important issues that are topical to Oman and also beyond. So I will be talking in English. Sa'adat Khalil Al Khonji, I would like to thank you and also Al Majlis for inviting me today. So my topic, as mentioned by Dr. Rizaqi, is I'm going to address the topic, of sustainable food system towards achieving food and nutrition security. And this topic actually comes at a time which is quite critical when we are still struggling to combat the pandemic, COVID-19, which is reminding us of the importance of our food systems for better nutrition, and also at a time when the Sultanate has just been hit by Cyclone Shaheen, which has hardly affected the agriculture and fisheries sector. So again, those two events are reminding us of the importance of food and nutrition security. I would like to apologize for not being able to turn on my camera. I do not know what is happening today, but we've been trying to address the issue, but in vain. Next, please. And also, just as a reminder, on the 16th of October, we have been celebrating the World Food Day, and the theme of of this year was our actions are our future, better production, better nutrition, better environment, and a better life, which is summarizing quite well all the issues related to food systems. So I will, first of all, start with a few facts and figures, reminding us of the importance of food and agriculture in the 2030 Agenda on Sustainable Development. Secondly, we'll try and summarize define the issue of food system, which is quite of a complex concept, and what does it mean, what does it entail. Thirdly, I will walk you through some of the actions that can transform our food systems, and maybe mention some of the actions that we have been carrying here in Oman, and also what FAO does in general. And finally, we will discuss the role and the important role of partnerships and their importance across the food system. Next, please. Next, please. Next slide. Faris, next slide, please. So well before the COVID-19 pandemic, sorry, previous slide, I couldn't see the screen, that's why I think there is a problem, yes. So well before the COVID-19 pandemic, we were already not very much on track to meet our commitments in order to end world hunger and malnutrition in all its forms by 2030, as mentioned by the Sustainable Development Goals agenda. Now that the pandemic has made it even more significantly challenging to overcome this plague. After remaining virtually unchanged for 5 years, the prevalence of undernourishment increased by about 1.5% points in 2020, reaching a level of 9.9%. And this trend actually heightens the challenge of achieving the Food Zero Hunger challenge. Also, another fact is that between, let's say, 720 and a little bit over 800 million people in the world faced hunger in 2020. So that was during the pandemic. So considering the middle of the projected range, meaning around 770 million people, we consider that around as many as 118 million more people were facing hunger in 2020, which is 118 million more than in 2019, sorry. Also, another fact is that around 660 million people may face hunger in 2030, still, unfortunately. And this is in part due to, one, the lasting effects of the COVID pandemic on the global food security, and where we will have 30 million more people than in the scenario in which the pandemic wouldn't have occurred. So this is quite gloomy. While the global prevalence of moderate or severe food insecurity has been slowly on the rise since 2014, the estimated increase in 2020 was equal to that of the previous 5 years combined. So nearly, what does it mean? Nearly 1 in 3 people in the world, around over than 2 billion people, did not have access to adequate food in 2020, an increase of over 230 million people in 1 year. So I could go on and on, as the global level also of the gender gap in the prevalence is quite severe and has been worsened during the pandemic. So all this is telling us that the high cost of healthy diets, coupled with persistent high levels of income inequality, are putting healthy diets out of reach for about 3 billion people in the world, especially the poor, and in every region of the world. So the pandemic has really worsened the malnutrition challenge in all its form, so that making it one of the major challenges in the 21st century. Next, please. So what we call malnutrition is undernutrition, micronutrient deficiencies, and also overweight and obesity. So as you can see, our battle against hunger is not over, unfortunately. Next, please. So in terms of malnutrition, again, a few key figures. The COVID pandemic has likely impacted the prevalence of multiple forms of malnutrition, and this could have lasting effects beyond 2020. And these effects will be compounded through the intergenerational effects of malnutrition and the resulting impacts of productivity. Both productivity has been increasing and also the effects of malnutrition over the generation will be lasting. So what are the drivers of food insecurity and malnutrition? They are both external, such as conflicts or climate shocks, and also internal, low productivity and insufficient or inefficient food supply chains. So food systems are increasingly, so those drivers are affecting food systems in frequency and intensity as those two factors emerge, and this is pushing up the cost of nutritious food, which combined with low incomes are increasing the unaffordability of healthy diets, particularly in countries affected by multiple drivers. So because of these major drivers, which are negatively affecting food security and nutrition, the food system, looking at food systems with a nutrition lens is very important to better understand their interactions and identify also entry points for interventions to address them from the policy, from the legislation, from the food environment, etc. We will see that later. So our diets are actually born from food systems, and food systems influence the type of food that are produced and the nature of their journey from farm to fork. And the failure to ensure food systems to deliver better diets, while at the same time minimizing their environmental impact, is extremely, extremely costly. However, when they are transformed with greater resilience to specifically address the major drivers, food systems can provide affordable, healthy diets that are sustainable and inclusive, and they can also become a very powerful driving force towards ending hunger, food insecurity, and malnutrition. So this is why it's important to look at food systems in a certain way, and we will come to it. And here comes the why the Agenda 2030 next. The Agenda 2030 is recognizing that we can no longer look at food livelihoods and we cannot look at food in a separate way. We need to look at food in its entirety as an issue which is quite encompassing. And we cannot separate it from livelihoods, and we cannot separate it from the management of natural resources. So the UN Food Summit, which took place in September 2021 this year in New York and convened by the Secretary General of the United Nations, brought forward a series of concrete actions to support a transformation of the world food systems. And I must say that the Sultanate has done very important work to participate in the summit and also in preparation to the summit. I'll come back to that later. So the commitment of the Sultanate on this topic of food system transformation is a reality. Next, please. So the old way of looking at food system, at food systems was starting from and looking at production, distribution, and retail, meaning the producer, the distributor, and the retailer only. However, this approach is eluding and ignoring, next please, the importance of a wide range of actors that are needed and that are also that are playing a very important role in the food system, because the food system is not just about a few actors such as farmers, retailers, or consumers. It is made up of a wide range of constituencies, and in many countries, the middle is made up of small and medium enterprises. So creating a favorable environment for them is very essential to ensure transformative food systems. I will come now to the definitions next of what a food system and how a food system is being defined. So the food system, as officially defined, it gathers all the elements the environment, the people, the inputs, processes, infrastructure, institutions, and also the activities that relate to production, processing, distribution, preparation, consumption of the food, but also all the outputs of these activities, which include socioeconomic outputs, environmental outcomes, and actually, if we can summarize this in a very simplistic way, I would say that the food system, or the Earth food system, is compound and composed of 3 pillars. You have the food supply chain that is encompassing all the steps between the production to the consumption. Then there is the food environment, and then there is the consumer behavior. Next, please. So this food system is pictured in a very complicated way, and it has been defined, as you can see, by the high-level panel of experts on food security and nutrition, which published a report in 2017, where this panel proposed a framework with a lot of details on the influencers of the food system and their relationships for reaching healthy diets. Across the top, you will see that all the micro drivers to the food systems. You have the biophysical and environmental drivers, innovation and technology, political and economic drivers, and also the demographical drivers. And all these drivers affect the 3 pillars. And once you have, please next, maybe the next chart will be a bit easier to read. Next, please, yeah. All these drivers actually have an effect on the food supply chain, have an effect on the food environment, which in turn is affecting the consumer behavior. So both the food supply chains and the food environment affect the consumer behavior, because our diets are born from food systems, and food systems influence the types of food produced and also the nature of their journey from farm to fork. And the failure to ensure food systems deliver better diets while also at the same time minimizing their environmental impact is extremely costly. So if we fail to have sustainable food systems, we fail to have diets that are affordable to all. So food systems actually, when they function very well, are supposed to provide food that is healthy, sufficient in quality and quantity, affordable, safe, and also culturally acceptable. Often we forget this component or dimension of culture. So obviously in the world, something has gone wrong, and we are left, and that's why we are left with a high burden of malnutrition in all its forms. It's a proof that our food systems are not functioning well. So these food systems, when they're sustainable, they can be seen both as entry and advantage points for achieving all the SDGs and their elements. Next, please. Next slide, please. Before that. So what can we do? Actually, our actions or intervention should both act at the supply side and also demand side, so as to find this balance. And they have also to affect the food environment and also the policy side in order to change consumer behavior at the end, and also the institutional environment with the policies and legislation, etc. Next, please. So what can we do in terms of improving the supply side? So this is about actually the farmers and the producers. they have to be, or they need to be staying informed, because diversity makes agri-food systems and people's livelihood more resilient and adaptable to crises such as climate change. Farmers, for example, can build resilience by improving or producing nutrition foods, by protecting biodiversity, by engaging actually in agroecological production systems, by also engaging with agricultural extension services and together with the researchers and the public sector, and looking at the diversity of production and nutritious food, because actually the producer has a very big power of influencing the consumer by producing all these sustainable foods. The farmer has to go green, to be to try and strive for environmentally friendly agricultural practices and use natural resources more efficiently and adopt sustainable agricultural practices in order to increase agrobiodiversity. And these practices that we often call climate smart agriculture are also there to mitigate and adapt to climate change. Some of the examples, for instance, I'm sure you're all familiar with the crop rotation, increased crop diversity, use of cover crops. All the agroforestry also practices and agroecology are only some examples that farmers can undertake. They can go also digital. We've seen with the pandemic that agriculture is becoming more and more digitalized, and this is actually a proof of the acceleration of innovations in the sector. FAO has a digital service portfolio, for example, that is gathering all the useful data and information, maps and statistics of more than 800,000 registered farmers who receive information and services on agriculture, on e-agriculture. It's like a community of practice that offers also capacity development, collects best practices on healthy diets and so forth. Also, the protection of soil, reducing food losses, and climate smart agriculture are all initiatives that are meant to improve the supply side and towards that having an impact on the consumer. Next, please. On the demand side, this is actually tapping into the influence of consumers and collective demand to transform agri-food systems to make them more inclusive, resilient, and sustainable. It's one of our goals as FAO, is that consumer behavior and collective demand is very, very important. It's probably the part of the system which is the most familiar to all of us, but it's not necessarily the easiest to address because it's quite complex to change habits and to have an impact on consumer choices and preferences. However, the consumer has the power to choose what to buy and to also how much to pay and how to prepare and eat the food that is purchased. So it is an important part of the transformation of food systems, because the consumer behavior and the consumer transformation. So in a nutshell, shaping consumer behaviors and collective demand can help change markets. So it can have an effect on market. It's not only the market that changes the consumer, but also the consumer changes the market with the demand. And we can see that now in many countries, including in the Sultanate, consumers are more and more interested in knowing from where their food is, from where it originates, and how it is produced and under which conditions. Maybe I could give two examples. There is an initiative of FAO called Fishing Areas, where it classifies, it's one of the tools that makes information on fishing areas more transparent. It's a portal that where you can learn that you are purchasing, where you can learn from the fish that you're purchasing and from which waters it comes, etc., and how it supports the local economy. And also another program with which is called the Quality and Origin of Products. For several years, FAO has been working together with partners, governments, and also producers to register traditionally made products under the geographical indications labels, which probably you all know of. Some examples include, for example, the Darjeeling tea in India, the Manchego cheese in Spain, Zafran in Morocco. Those labels, for example, help consumers link the product to some characteristics of territories. And this has an impact on taste and quality. And we're trying actually to develop this concept here in the Sultanate through a project that we are developing to strengthen the apiculture value chain. So these are only a few examples. And the consumer has the choice. If the consumer, for example, chooses one of these products, that it is ready to, he or she is ready to pay higher prices and in order to have access to these quality products. Next, please. So this is actually about the importance of policies. We've talked about how to transform the supply side. We've talked about how to transform the demand side. And now we are going to address a very important topic, which is policies and their importance in order to transform the food systems to eventually lead to enhanced food and nutrition security. So actually, there are a number of policies that can be applied to affect both the food supply chain. For example, some examples include improvement in production practices and introducing, for instance, incentives to incentivize farmers to produce sustainably. These are just a few examples, and also improve their storage, improve the labeling of food. So these can be done through policies that encourage farmers to improve their production, and this will certainly have an effect on the positive effect on the food environment, and the food environment itself can be also benefiting from conducive policies or sound policies that can improve the food environment through targeted programs which focus or which will address the quality of the food that the environment is going to be characterized with. For example, campaigns to change the behavior of consumers. It can be also through tools of labeling food, through policies, pricing policies that encourage the purchasing of quality food. There are a number of policies that could influence this environment in a positive way. And this in turn will have a positive effect on the consumer behavior. Some policies need to be actually, on the contrary, avoided, because there are examples of policies and programs that can lead to nutrition exiting the supply chain, which means having unsustainable supply chain. For example, some subsidies for production of less nutritious foods, such as those foods that are rich in sugar, trade agreements that are limiting the policy space for policies, or also at aiming at improving nutrition. Examples of policies also that are, on the contrary, affecting the food environment in a negative way are, for example, nutrition guidelines that are not in line with evidence, that are misleading, that are pushing for misleading labeling, or that are also pushing for unrestricted marketing of food and beverages for children, for example, that are very rich in sugar or saturated fat. So all these strategies are not meant there to improve the food environment. So the figure, as you can see, is depicting the way in which food supply chains interface with the food environments, and then the potential impact pathway that can orient consumers towards a positive change towards improved diets and nutrition. And there are three main pathways as a summary via which supply chains can improve diets and nutrition outcomes. And these are by increasing consumption of nutritious foods, also increasing consumption of nutritious foods. The second pathway is by decreasing the consumption of less nutritious foods. And the third pathway is by generating income, which can enable consumers to purchase more nutritious foods to improve their diets. So entry points also are raising awareness. This is very important, to raise awareness among the different actors in the value chain to stimulate the demand for nutritious foods. It is to be noted that economic constraints, lack of knowledge and information, and also lack of demand for nutritious foods are also critical factors that limit access to nutritious food. So we want to reverse this trend. Next, please. Now we are going to turn into discussing or mentioning the importance of partnerships as a tool to transform our food systems. So building partnerships across sectors is really essential for effective engagement of all the stakeholders, from advocates representing the hungry and the poor, to researchers and academic community involved in knowledge creation, and businesses that can commercialize products and practices. So through collaborative initiatives and international partnerships, FAO also has a role in building the capacities and catalyzing knowledge and information for improved solutions. Maybe next, some of the examples to go into details about the role of each of these actors. In a nutshell, civil society, for example, can garner support for change through raising awareness about the multiple benefits of building public support and political will to transform agri-food systems. So that's the advocacy role of civil society that can mobilize campaigns, events, and networks to help individuals be more active and also trigger change in decision-making as well. So, and also promoting those who who produce the food to have more voice in order to promote the topic of healthy diets. They need to also adopt a bottom-up approaches to advocate for fair, legitimate, and transparent government policy and decision-making, and on healthy diets and sustainable food systems. Promote nutrition and sustainable habits through promoting knowledge, nutritional knowledge and cooking skills, acting at the level of schools. It's very important to approach schools in order to influence the children from an early age. and also helping producers to help to build resilience, and also producers and also their organizations, cooperatives, farmers organizations, to become more resilient and also promote local knowledge, local productions, local innovations.
Excuse me, Your Excellency, what is a bottom-up approach?
Bottom-up approach in the sense that the civil society can work together with the farmers, with the producers, in order to help voice their needs, so that the policymakers and the policy making can be influenced. So through bottom-up approaches and not only top-down approaches, through advocacy campaigns, yeah. And then next, please. Academia and researchers have a very, very important role to inform both the supply and demand side and also the policy side. And actually, the research needs to be very inclusive. And what do we mean by inclusive? It's actually the need to generate science and evidence-based, that is a knowledge that is inclusive in the sense that they should strive for a blend of a mix of old and indigenous and traditional knowledge with innovations and technological knowledge. So making this bridge between the two, because both types of knowledge are important when we talk about sustainable food systems. And their importance to work with the producers, to exchange and learn from each other. And the relationship between the researcher and the farmer is extremely important. Of course, when we talk about research, we immediately have in mind their important role for generating and sharing knowledge. They can take part in studies and research to try and generate knowledge that can be used by policymakers. I will give you an example later of an initiative, for example, that we're developing with Sultan Qaboos University that is exactly illustrating this point, to promote nutrition through universities, schools, and etc., and in order to equip younger generations and encourage them to bring about the change that is needed, and also partner with FAO and other international organizations to implement, for example, some guidelines. I'm thinking of the voluntary guidelines on food systems and nutrition that has just been issued by the Committee on World Food Security, which is actually one of the most inclusive international platforms that is hosted and co-funded by FAO, where stakeholders exchange knowledge and also develop international guidelines on all sorts of issues. And then one of the last ones is about food systems, and that's how the definition also came out from this platform. Next, please. The private sector, for sure, has a very critical role in terms of pushing for sustainability, for also making nutritious food more available and affordable through responsible behavior and attitude and business, through also reducing food waste, reaching out also to the consumers to push them to consume responsibly and healthy diets. So the private sector has a very, very important role, as you all know. Next, please. And finally, the individual, us as individuals, have a very, very important role in the way in which we choose our diets, and we make our choices in a very conscious way, coming from within in order to share it with the external world. So we have actually a control on the way in which we eat and we use and we throw or not throw our food. And this actually is a whole culture, and it starts from childhood. That is why it's very, very difficult to change behavior at an adult and later stage, but it's still possible. So the importance of actually developing this culture of sustainability, of making sustainable food choices is critical, especially at the school level or even earlier. Reducing food waste is extremely important as well, when we know that more than 14% of the food is wasted worldwide, even more. And recycling, we now often talk about circular economy. It's becoming a trend, and also protecting our natural resources. All this discourse you all know about, but that's part of the food system. And the bottom line of all this is that food system can be influenced by all of us, including us as individuals. So next, please. So what does FAO do in Oman? Since we're coming at the end of the presentation, I'm going to just summarize the type of initiatives that we're developing. In terms of knowledge generation, we have been actually working on the food systems from a knowledge point of view, to try and understand some of the gaps in the food system, and focusing specifically on some targeted commodities in order for us to, once we have identified the gaps, try to come up with a few recommendations to inform policymakers. So we've been studying, for example, the carrots and papaya value chains. And we are currently doing some work actually with Dr. Mohammed Rozaki and his team on meat and poultry, because meat is often looked at and looked at in a way, and not always in a positive way, in the way in which it influences the food system. So we are trying to understand what is the link between food and the poultry and meat value chains, and the emergence of some of the non-communicable diseases such as hypertension, diabetes, and obesity. So we are trying it's very important to understand this relationship in order to devise and help policymakers devise the best policies. So that's one example of knowledge generation. We have been also developing a few initiatives, dialogue initiatives, bringing together some of the government, private sector, public actors, civil society together in preparation to the World Food Summit that I mentioned just before, that was held in September in New York. And the Sultanate has done actually a superb work in developing these national dialogues that we supported as well, together with Ministry of Agriculture, Fisheries and Water Resources. And the outcome of this dialogue was the roadmap that was presented by His Excellency the Minister of Agriculture, Fisheries and Water Resources in New York, to also to highlighting the commitment of the Sultanate to transforming its food systems. And also we have a number of initiatives that build the capacities of both farmers, the government, consumers on various issues, through mainly strengthening value chains from production to consumption, and to improve the production, to improve the marketing. And we are doing this with the honey or apiculture value chain I mentioned before. There is even a possibility to develop a geographical indicator on Omani honey. And we have also a project that we're starting very shortly on supporting a group of women in Dhofar to make camel cheese as a high added value product. It's a niche market that can have a positive impact on livelihoods, and also camel cheese and camel milk products are very known for their high nutritional value. We have also a number of projects on coastal women to improve their marketing capacities in order to improve their livelihoods, to market a product from the fisheries. And also, all these initiatives are actually bringing actors together, strengthening their capacities. We have a number of initiatives also around farmer business schools to improve the entrepreneurship skills of farmers. This is a pilot initiative in Al Batina. We have also been developing a number of campaigns on consumer behaviors, on also supporting the government in policy making through sustainable agriculture and rural development strategy. We have been also involved in, we are involved actually with the Environment Authority in the development of the environment strategy of Oman. And this is really a good sign that us as an organization which is dealing with food security, being invited by such an authority is a proof that the antagonism between agriculture and environment is not the solution, but rather the meeting of the two to work towards sustainability. We have been also developing a number of regulations on fish meal, on also we're working on small pelagics, which is one of the most important fisheries resources, to develop a management plan. Anyways, all these initiatives are contributing to improving the food systems towards more sustainability in the Sultanate of Oman. And there is also another project that we're going to start soon on climate change in order to reinforce the institutional capacity of the country and also the studies in order to better improve the use of water resources and also the production of some crops in the face of climate change. So this is in a nutshell what I wanted to share with you today. I'm sorry if it was a bit long, and I thank you very much for your patience and for listening to this presentation. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Nora, for your very valuable presentation on the food system. And as you said, in parallel, of course, Oman takes a very special importance to food system in many of the strategies. I'm sure also many of the guests are here with better knowledge on such strategies like a food security strategy 2040, agriculture and rural development strategy in terms of farmers and fisheries, of course, development strategy 2040. There is also a special strategy on nutritional strategy on 2030, from 2020 to 2030. And as you know, of course, there is a big movement to enhance the food system as a whole in the Sultanate, starting from production, the environment, including the food imports with the fortified ingredients. Also, there is a geographical indication of some of the OFIC companies with the fortified supplements, let's say, or vitamins. Also, in terms of consumers' behavior, as you mentioned in your slides, the environment, in educating farmers in some of your initiatives. Also, the government also moves toward the safe pesticide use as well as good management of natural resources. There's a big move also in terms of water usage, soil-less farming, and plastic banning strategies. Now the floor is open for our guests. Let's hear from Engineer Saleh Shamfari. Please, Engineer Saleh, go ahead.
Well, thank you very much, Saadat Nora. In fact, I've been enjoying various speeches for last week on this week, quite very extensive and impressive. In fact, while we are now listening to you, there is an ongoing, the Green Initiative of Saudi Arabia, where an international gathering is happening since the morning. I've been following and continuously listening to various initiatives, be it in food, nutrition, or green initiatives. I think what matters more to us from a business perspective is where really the systems matter much, because the reality is that whatever we do at a government level or at international agencies level, in terms of trying to advocate better solutions and better systems, if we didn't have the buy-in from the businesses, we would never be able to, say, for example, do fortification i.e. add nutrition to the food, or improve the labeling, or improve the quality standards of the food. So that is one angle, which in OFIC level, we try to do on all levels, whereby we add extra nutrition to the food. For example, we add folic acid to the bread and some micronutrients, and we add vitamins to the milk to make sure that while you're consuming high quality local fresh products, you're also making sure that your kids and your family members are also consuming the right amount of food, and any shortage of micronutrients is being covered by the likelihood of consuming products that are coming from our investee company. So that's one thing that we're always concerned with, and we work very closely with the FAO system and with the WHO and Ministry of Health and Ministry of Education to make sure that there should be an improvement on the health system of our kids in the schools, by making sure that there are ideal meals are being introduced, training is being done at the school level, and it's a must that we have to continue doing this. The other important element is that while international organizations are doing a great job in creating awareness, what matters more is sustainability. Sustainability on the initiatives. From time to time, we keep hearing an initiative here, an initiative there. I myself have started 1992 Earth Summit Rio de Janeiro, since Agenda 21, which was the highlight that time, was introduced, and then we have came with the SDGs 17s, which is Sustainable Development Goals of UN, and they are quite important. And the more are coming, more initiatives are coming. Now, while you were speaking, there was another speech in Saudi about the green bond, whereby a green bond would be able to help us in improving our food systems. My concern is like this, that while we are heavily engaged in introducing solutions and talking about initiatives, what is it that we're doing in the ground is more important. I'm talking about our role at private sector, and I believe we have to be more adamant in terms of making sure that the system that we adopt in manufacturing, in harvesting, in even production, are sustainable, are regenerative in the sense they are capable of producing zero waste and helping our environment to be more cleaner, i.e. more carbon capture and more circular biodiversity and more circular bioeconomy should be built in. And therefore, the ability to have an IRR on being nice, that is more important. I should say that the internal rate of being nice, or the internal rate of being kind to nature and to the people around you, to the society, would pay more toward the future goals. But yes, I do support Her Excellency's initiatives. I do also commend her role. I should say that while she are doing a great job, the impact she's making on our ecosystem is quite immense and quite clear. And we always like to work very close with the UN here, especially with FAO, where they're heavily involved in improving our production systems and our food systems. And so thank you very much for giving me the chance, Dr. Mohammed, and thanks to Majlis Al Khonji for arranging this very important talk with Her Excellency Nora Haddad. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Engineer Saleh, for your speech, as well as your highlighted points in terms of production and sustainability. So let's hear from anyone has any question. Mr. Khalil, تفضل أخي Khalil.
مساء الخير. Good evening. Thank you, Dr. Mohammed. Thanks very much to Dr. Nora And my question or my point is again to something that Engineer Salah has mentioned. So when we talk sustainability, it is more of having food, but sustainability, like we mentioned, smart climate, and it was very last slide that Dr. Nora has mentioned about the environment as a climate. But the astonishing number that I saw in the first maybe slide, on that statistic slide, was 33% of greenhouse gases attributed to food system. And that's a big number. It's quite big number. I have to admit it was alarming for me to see that. But thinking about it, probably it is to do with the manufacturing and transportation and all that. So that sector maybe contributes a lot to that one. Despite all that, we have big numbers of hungry people going to bed hungry in the world. So there is something missing somewhere. So we have big industrial movement, but we have also big number of people sleeping, going to bed hungry. And I remember Expo 2015 in Milan. It was all to do with the food system, with the food and the hunger. The theme was like Zero Hunger Challenge or something like this. And Expo is an international, that was the UN theme, by the way, the Zero Hunger Challenge, I think it was. So something like this, we have numbers, we all know them, but at the same time, there are no really actions. Something like the Paris Agreement, for example, on the environment. Are we going to see the likes of Paris Agreement on food? Having an example is the environmental program of the UN started in beginning of 1970s, but FAO is there from last 75 years. So what is missing here? Probably Dr. Nora can shed some light there. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Khalil. Let's hear from Your Excellency, Dr. Nora.
Yes, thank you very much. No, you're absolutely right. This is why I was saying something. We missed something by arriving at this point. Certainly, in terms of availability of the food is available. That's not the problem. The problem is one on the distribution, on the increasing inequalities, and also on the quality of the food. It's interesting to see that the more a country gets developed, the more malnutrition increases. It seems that development is sometimes coupled with eating unhealthy food. That has been the case for a long time. But I think that habits are starting to change, maybe not at a very big pace, but it is starting to change through initiatives here and there. The issue also is that with the COVID-19, that has completely shuffled and put the world into a different pace, in the sense that in 2008, 2007, 2008, when there was the food crisis, it was more about protectionism and more about prices soaring. This time, it's not so much about that. It's much more about people losing income, becoming poorer, and when you become poorer, the first reflex is to cut on the healthy food, the fruits, the vegetables. So the issue is becoming unaffordability of the diets rather than accessibility of the food itself. So that is a big factor that is explaining why the food systems are not going well. The other issue is, of course, the environment. The environment, agriculture has been, is both a solution and at the same time a contributor to the degradation of the environment. And that is why climate smart agriculture is very important to push. So it's also one of the issues that needs to be addressed very, very seriously, to try and address the environmental impact of agriculture on the food systems. That's why actually the food system is becoming more and more complex and not very easy to address, because it's multi-dimensional, multi-actor, multi-topic, multi-drivers, multi-everything. But at least there is this conscious, and I think summits, maybe it may seem as an initiative, but the summit, the UN summit is quite a step forward to call the world to pay more attention to food systems, and also to look at them in a much more complex and integrated way than we used to in the past. But I agree with you that the situation is really, really alarming.
Thank you, Khalil. Thank you, Dr. Nora, for your clarification. The pollution is always there, and you never have a zero pollution, but the novelty is to manage the pollution, and this is what usually, in production side, usually they should consider to optimize production for a minimum pollution, and this is strategy by itself. So let's hear from Dr. Ramin Muhajir. Tafadhal.
أسعد الله مساكم بكل خير. Your Excellency, thank you for a very comprehensive and very simply explained presentation, which I'm sure has very complex background to it. I had two questions, Your Excellency. One is, you mentioned that maybe famine or food in general is no longer an isolated matter, and it has links to other aspects of society. Do you think it's also at a wider level directly connected or indirectly connected to very global matters, which the UN has a hand in, things such as social discourse, peace, equality, justice? These aspects are also, I mean, if these are solved, the food and famine and all the other issues will be resolved as well. Maybe your thoughts on that. And the second question is, you briefly mentioned the programs that FAO is doing with the farmers, which are really the grassroots of the whole food chain in Oman. Can you possibly elaborate on some of the programs or the cooperation that FAO is doing directly with the farmers? And thank you again.
Thank you, Dr. Ramin. Yeah, please, Dr. Nora.
Thank you so much, Doctor, for your very kind words of encouragement, first of all. And I think you brought up some very important points. First of all, on the drivers of hunger and malnutrition, you're absolutely right. They are connected to global drivers or regional drivers even. As I mentioned before, the food systems is affected by both external drivers and internal drivers. External drivers include climate change or climate variability, and we've seen it recently in Oman, where the cyclone Shaheen has been hitting the agricultural sector in a very strong way. And unfortunately, from what we hear from the farmers, we are going to feel the consequences directly in the coming weeks and months on the impact on food security of the country. Peace is extremely important. There is a study or a report that we have issued recently on the state of food in the MENA region, Middle East and North Africa region, that we as FAO have issued. And one of the conclusions, I think it's the report of 2020, if I'm not mistaken. One of the conclusions is that peace and food security are very strongly linked. Without peace, you don't have food security, and food security cannot be achieved without peace and equality and justice. Definitely, and there is evidence to that. So all these are external drivers that are pushing hunger upwards. And the other internal drivers are internal inequality, productivity of the agricultural sector, which can be affected by different factors. And also in terms of the external drivers, we have, of course, the pandemics are also part of the external factors. So yeah, all these are internal and external drivers that are pushing our systems, food systems towards unsustainability. Now, in terms of our programs in Oman, thank you for your interest in those in what we are doing in the Sultanate. We're doing quite a few things, and I also thank Engineer Shanfari for his kind words. We are a small team, but we're trying to do as much as we can with also all the different actors, and we are certainly we wouldn't have been able to do what we are doing without the concurrence of the academic community. Sultanate University is one of our main strategic partners, the private sector with OFIC and its different companies, with farmers organizations, farmers associations such as the Omani Farmer Association, the Fisheries Association, the Omani Women Association, and I'm certainly missing some of them, the foundations like Al Jisr, like Zubair Foundation. So we work with all these stakeholders to implement some initiatives, and one of them is for example, if I want to give an example, is the apiculture value chain. Actually, this is a program that is the result of a partnership, public-private partnership with Ministry of Agriculture, Fisheries and Water Resources, with Riyadh, with OMIFCO, the donor of this initiative. So we're trying to actually reinforce and mobilize the honey producers towards developing a Omani brand for honey with a group of producers from two regions, Sharqiya and Dakhiliya. And we have a number of activities, including actually strengthening the organizational capacities of producers. This is very important in order to strengthen a group and develop some endogenous change of attitude, because we believe very much that if farmers are not organized or producers are not organized, they cannot improve their productivity or their productivity and also their sustainability. So we are very much insisting on developing the organizational capacities of a group of producers, and we do that consistently throughout our initiatives. And in parallel, we are also supporting and developing their marketing skills, and also assessing the capacities of labs, of the labs in terms of apiculture practices, trying to look into improving and also assessing the good apicultural capacities. In a nutshell, this project, for example, has a number of steps and a number of activities towards improving the quality of honey in Oman. So this is on the value chains development. On the policy side, we have a number of initiatives we've been supporting the government, for example, to develop the Sustainable Agriculture and Rural Development Strategy 2040. And this is very important work, because this has been actually the emanation or the result of a request from the government of Oman in its strategy to diversify its economy. And we have been supporting the development of this strategy, which has guided the development of programs related to food security in Oman. I could go on. I don't want to monopolize the floor, but we have a number of initiatives, and I'll be happy to discuss them also on the side if you're interested.
Thank you, Dr. Nora. Actually, what you say, the small number.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency. It was very, very informative.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Rahman. Yeah, as you said, Your Excellence, a small group, let's say, or small action creates a big impact. And this is what exactly the FAO Muscat or Oman is doing here in the Sultanate. I'm also actually proud to see some of my graduating students in the meeting. They are doing product developments for food, and sometimes the product developments, the novelty, the innovation of these MPD products could also make some of the changes in the production side of the food system. Let's hear from Dr. Ali Habiba. What I see is that you raise your hand, so I don't know. Can you just take?
السلام عليكم دكتور محمد. كيف حالكم طيبين؟ الصوت واصل؟
Yes, Dr. Yes.
أولا السلام عليكم. شكرا جميعا لكم. I have one question is, did you manage to develop a plan for the families in Oman, everywhere in Oman, to start planting at their home, not just depending in others, buying their needs from the market, by educating them, helping them, so they can, whatever land they have through the house, in the terrace, in the balcony, so they can plant at least their needs, like tomatoes, some cucumbers, some so and so. Is there any plan being developed to encourage them, Doctor? This is my question.
Thank you, Dr. تفضلي يا دكتور نور.
شكرا للسؤال. Do you mean, just before answering, do you mean subsistence agriculture? Do you mean developing plans for agriculture just for self-subsistence, or also to sell to the market in order to increase their incomes?
No, it's not to improve their income. It's to improve their healthy eating, the quality of eating. باختصار، هل تم تطوير برنامج لتشجيع الأسر في الوطن، سواء في كافة المناطق، انه يزرع له شوية طماطة، شوية جرجير، شوية بقدونس، شوية كذا، ولا يعتمد على المستورد على السوق. يبدأ واضح؟ مثلا أنا في بيت
واضح
كويسة وأزرع سنويا ومرتاح منها. يكفي ليس للبيع، إنما الطماطة، الجرجير، البقدونس، الخيار كذا، هالمنتج خضروات قاعد أزرعها بنفسي، وقت فراغي قاعد. هل تم تطوير برنامج تحفيز تشجيع المجتمع؟ لأنه هو بنفسه يبدأ يزرع لنفسه، فراح ياكل مواد خضروات بدون كيماويات، بدون رش، بدون كذا، تحت عنايته هو بزراعها. أرجو أن يتم تطوير مثل هالبرنامج إذا كان موجود. شكرا دكتور.
شكرا.
شكرا جزيلا للسؤال. تمام، عندنا اصلا مشروع اللي يتجاوب مع المتطلبات اللي تكرمت بها الان مثلا، لكن للاسف هذا المشروع ليس يعني في قيد التنفيذ بعد. هو مشروع مع بلدية مسقط اصلا، الذي يهدف إلى تطوير الزراعة في المدن في المدينة، على أساس أنه يتم تشجيع العائلات في حي معين لتطوير الزراعة في الحدائق، الزراعة الحقلية في المنزل، مثلا عن طريق تطوير خضر وفواكه، وكذلك تطوير حدائق مشتركة بين عائلات التي تسكن في نفس الحي مثلا، وكذلك تطوير تربية النحيل، لأن النحيل يعني ما يتطلب إلى الكثير من المكان يتطلب إلى مهارات طبعا، لكن ليست لديه نفس المتطلبات اللي تتطلبها مثلا زراعة الفواكه ولا الأشجار فنعم. فشكرا للسؤال، وسنتطلع إلى هذا الموضوع بدقة.
شكرا للإجابة. لأنه إذا استطعنا أن نجعل السكان في عمان أن يعتمدوا على نفسهم في هاي المزروعات البسيطة، الخضروات، يعتمدوا على نفسهم، يزرعوا بالأماكن اللي هي موجودة لديهم حسب قدراتهم. أعتقد راح يتناولوا بالنهاية خضروات مفيدة ذات جودة عالية بدون أي كيماويات، بدون أي محسنات في التربة. دكتور محمد، يا ريت لو بعدين على الخاص، يعني أنا عندي بعض الأفكار في هالمواضيع نقدر نتباحث فيها.
إن شاء الله. شكرا جزيلا. Thank you very much دكتور علي. Yeah, it's really a household is always.
الصوت ما في صوت، الصوت انقطع.
الصوت دكتور محمد عندك.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you very much, Dr. Ali. As you say, the household is always there, and it's a social pillar, which is really important for the society. So let's take the last two questions before we end the session with Akhi Simon Karam. Let's hear from Badriya Siabi one question, and if anyone else would like to ask any question to our guest, Her Excellence Dr. Nora, please raise a hand. So please, Badriya, go ahead with your question.
مساء الخير، كيف الحال؟ شكرا سعادتك على المحاضرة الرائعة. أنا عندي يعني كذا 3 أسئلة بس سريعة. السؤال الأولاني، أعرف يعني سمعت أن عندكم مشاريع لها دخل بالزراعة والسياحة، فإذا تعطينا فكرة سريعة عنها. السؤال الثاني، نحن نتكلم عن الزراعة، فإيش تحديات المائية؟ يعني الماء، إيش التحديات اللي السلطنة جالسة تعيشها؟ السؤال الأخير، أنت تكلمتي عن هو البروديوسر، لوكال بروديوسرز، فكيف يعني كيف نحن ممكن ندعم اليوزرز إنهم يستخدموا المنتج العماني؟ في النهاية نحن نتكلم عن ميد إن عمان برودكتس، I want to hear your view في ال3 نقاط. شكرا جزيلا.
شكرا بدرية. تفضل يا Yes, please, دكتور نورا.
شكرا بدرية، شكرا للأسئلة الدقيقة والمهمة جدا. والسؤال الأول هو بالنسبة لمبادراتنا التي تتعلق بالزراعة والسياحة. هذا موضوع تناقشنا فيه عدة مرات، والحمد لله عندنا أكثر من مبادرة اللي ممكن نربطها بهذا الموضوع المهم جدا، لأنه السياحة قد تكون مدخل أو دخل للمزارع إذا ربطها بممارساته أو بمنتجاته. فمثلا نحن نشتغل حاليا على مشروع الذي يهدف إلى تسجيل الأفلاج، بعض مواقع الأفلاج في نظام التراث العالمي الثقافي الزراعي اللي هو Globally Important Agricultural Heritage Systems. على أساس أنه هذا المشروع نشتغل على مع وزارة الزراعة والثروة السمكية وموارد المياه، وكذلك مع جامعة سلطان قابوس لتطوير تقرير لتسجيل هذه الأفلاج. وسوف تتساءلون إيش الربط مع السياحة، لأنه تسجيل هذه الأفلاج ستساعد المزارعين اللي شغالين على الأفلاج حول الأفلاج أن يتحصلوا على مثل مثل براند ومثل رخصة، على أساس أنه تسجيل هذا الأفلاج بيساعدهم لتطوير خطة عمل اللي ممكن تحتوي مثلا على أنشطة لحماية المنتجات المحلية، لترويج منتجاتهم المحلية وتسويقها في الفلج أو خارج الفلج، وبالتالي تحفيز السياحة من خلال هذه المنتجات وحمايتها. وكذلك وفي الأخير أنه النتيجة أنه بتكون أنه تحمي هذه الأفلاج في المستقبل، وتبقى لكي تبقى حية، وكذلك تجذب السياح عن طريق الممارسات الزراعية مثلا، مش ما فقط الممارسات الزراعية، ولكن الربط بين الزراعة والسياحة. وكذلك ستشجع الشباب إلى البقاء في مكانهم على حول الأفلاج، بحيث أنه يتحصلوا على دخل إضافي عن طريق هذه المنتجات الزراعية والاحتفاظ عليها. التحديات المائية في السلطنة هذا موضوع واسع وشاسع. طبعا السلطنة من ضمن البلدان التي تتعانى بشحة المياه، ولكن الحلول موجودة. من بين أسباب الصعوبات هي من بينها إدارية، وكذلك توجد تحديات بالنسبة للمناخ الذي يضغط على استنزاف موارد المياه. ولكن توجد خطات، توجد مبادرات، وتوجد حلول ابتكارية للتحدي من هذه من هذا المشكل. بالنسبة لدعم المستهلك، لكي دعم المستهلك ولا دعم المنتج؟ أصلاً الاثنين مهمين. بالنسبة للمنتجات المحلية، نحن قمنا طبعاً رفع الوعي مهم جداً عبر مثلاً حملات توعوية التي ممكن ترتدي شكل حملات بين عدة أطراف المصلحة. مثلا نحن قمنا بعدة حملات مع الوزارات، مع كذلك مؤسسات خاصة معكم كعمران لترويج هذا الموضوع وتشجيع المستهلك لاستهلاك منتجات محلية. وكذلك أهم شيء هي كذلك مبادرات لتعزيز قدرات المنتجين والمستهلكين لترويج المنتج العماني. وبعض المبادرات اللي ذكرتها سابقا مثلا حول العسل، حول منتجات الإبل، هي تساهم في ترويج المنتج العماني المحلي. كذلك أهم شيء هي السياسات، تحويل السياسات لكي تكون صديقة للمنتج المحلي، ودور الدولة مهم جدا في هذا السياق. باختصار المبادرات لازم يعني تستهدف عدة مستويات: مستوى السياسي لتغيير بيئة التغذية، المستوى الميداني خلال مبادرات ميدانية تعزيز قدرات المنتجين والمستهلكين وكل المساهمين في الأنظمة الغذائية، وكذلك الحملات التوعوية. كل هذه المبادرات تمشي مع بعض لتغيير وتحويل الأنظمة الغذائية نحو المزيد من الاستدامة. ما أعرف إذا جاوبت على أسئلتك.
واضح جدا، شكرا دكتورة. بس أنا أبغى أكد على كلامها الدكتورة، ترى السياسات يعني من غير clear policies ما بيكون في دعم حقيقي للمنتج العماني.
شكرا جزيلا أختي بدرية على السؤال الرائع. ومثل ما تفضلتي فعلا السياسات والسياسات دائما يعني تبنى على المستقبل إن شاء الله. هناك سياسة أمن غذائي، والمهندس صالح والأخوان في أوفك وجميع من يساهم في الإنتاج لهم دور، سواء المزارعين أو المصنعين. هناك سياسة الريفية، التطوير الريفي بمعنى صح 2040. هناك أيضا التغذوية، السياسة التغذوية الخاصة بوزارة الصحة بدأت في عام 2009 وستنتهي في عام 2030. وهناك نجاحات كبيرة حقيقة فيما يخص سواء كان على الجانب الصحي أو على النقص التغذوي بمعنى الماكرو نيوترينتس. هناك تحرك من وزارة الثروة الزراعية والسمكية وموارد المياه للتحديات، ومن ضمنها المياه مثل ما تفضلتي. هناك بحوث تقام سواء في الزراعة النسيجية، في seedless farming يعني بدون مياه، أو بالزراعة المائية. هناك أيضا الأكوابونكس سيستم موجودة في الكثير. هناك مثل ما تفضلت الدكتورة سعادة الدكتورة نورة فيما يخص المستهلك، دعم المستهلك ودعم المنتج، سواء كان عن طريق الأويرنس أو ربما عن طريق الإسهام في المنتجات المحلية الانديجينس برودكتس. هناك أيضا من الجانب الصحي وما تقوم به الوزارة والمجتمع المدني في المبيدات الحشرية، المبيدات واستخداماتها، سواء كان الاستخدام الزراعي أو الاستخدام ربما الاستخدامات المرتبطة بالبيئة بشكل عام. هناك وعي مجتمعي كبير. فشكرا جزيلا دكتورة نورة، محاضرة حقيقة يعني جدا استمتعنا فيها وليست غريبة على الأفيو عمان. هذه المساهمات المجتمعية من مسندم وإلى ظفار في منتجات تنبئ بخير كثير، وإن شاء الله تخدم المجتمع المدني وتساهم في التنمية الزراعية والتنمية الصحية والتنمية المجتمعية. طبعا أدعو أخي سايمون كرم للختام. فشكرا جزيلا على حضوركم وأتمنى لكم إن شاء الله ليلة سعيدة.
Thank you, Dr. Muhammad. Thank you, Your Excellency. I was going to have a very copious and rich dinner, but after this, I'm going to be more responsible and take it easy. We all are looking for a better production, better nutrition, better environment, and better life. This is the new slogan for FAO. Now, where does food and agriculture reside in 2030 agenda? The facts, disturbing facts were given. 3 billion cannot afford a healthy diet. You see, one figure, 14% of the world's food is lost in inadequate harvesting. 17 is wasted by consumer, etc. So we can no longer look at food, livelihoods, and management of natural resources separately. Therefore, food and agriculture lies at the very heart of 2030. So it's a great importance is given to food and agriculture. The old way was to insist on or describe production, distribution, and retailing. The food system, by definition now, modern definition, has changed. It gathers all elements and activities that relate to production, processing, and any activity relating to food. Three main things we look at, the system looks at: the food supply chain, the food environment, and the consumer behavior. The supply chain means processing, packaging, retailing, marketing. The environment, food prices, vendors' properties, food messaging, consumer behavior, cognitive, aspirational, situational. So this is a definition of the food system. It is presented in a complex way, but these three elements they summarize. So what can we do to improve that thing? On the supply side, there are many things we can do. Stay informed, be green, go digital, protect soil, reduce food losses, and be climate smart. In food environment, on the demand side, we can create demand for healthy food. We can shape the consumer behavior, and collective demand can help change market. the food we choose and the way we consume, it affects our health and that of our planet. Choose wisely, consume wisely, no more. And what we can do, of course, apart from the supply side and demand side, is the policies to transform food system for an enhanced food and nutrition security. Again, here, work on the food supply, the food environment, and the consumer behavior. Having defined all this and what action we can do, Her Excellency went into to talk about partnerships. And partnerships are a tool to transform food systems with civil society, with academia, with the important role of private sector, and finally, with individuals. For individuals, we require to redefine a whole culture. Eat local food, for example, eat colorful food, eat fresh, eat diverse. Once that was exposed, Her Excellency went on to say, give us a little information about what FAO does in Oman, and they do many things. They work on knowledge generation. They work on policies. They work on advocacy, campaigning to influence consumer behavior through articles, webinars, videos, social media, and they work on capacity building, strengthening value chains to improve production and market. Example, camel cheese, honey, fishery products, farmer business school. There were also many other projects on the use of water. This is environmental. Use of water, production of some new crops. In all, this was an extremely interesting talk. And we should start, every one of us probably, to change his behavior with food. Thank you so much, Your Excellency. Thank you, Dr. Mohammed. And thank you, all the participants. Thank you, Riham.
Thank you very much. Thank you. There is a message from Mr. Khalil Khonji. شكرا دكتورة نورا على حضورك إلى مجلس الخنجي والمحاضرة الموسعة عن الأمن الغذائي بكل أشكاله وأنواعه. شكرا للدكتور محمد الرزيقي على إدارته الجلسة بكل دقة وجميع الحضور والمتداخلين الكرام. أيضا وختاما شكرا للشيخ سمعان كرم على الخلاصة وريهام على التنسيق العام. ويعتذر على عدم التداخل كوني في موقع متحرك. تصبحون على خير وليلة سعيدة. شكرا لكم جزيلا. Thank you, Your Excellency Dr. Nora, for the informative presentation and talk. Thank you, Dr. Mohammed, for managing the discussion, and thank you, our guests, for your active participation. See you in the next Saturday, and until then, keep safe and goodbye. شكرا جزيلا لكم. إلى اللقاء.
جميعا شكرا.